Hey, hello everybody. My name is Tom Moen and I am a cloud architect with Microsoft working in the area across state and local government in the United States of America and focusing on compliance records and e-discovery. Last week we talked about compliance and compliance manager, compliance score. Great session. If you didn't see that, please consider giving it a look. Today, this week, we're going to look at records and retention policies inside of Office 365, which can contribute to your being in compliance or within compliance, being able to retain that content for legal reasons or, again, risk avoidance or compliance purposes. And then next week, we're going to talk about core content search and core e-discovery. And the week after that, we'll be looking at advanced e-discovery and all the great capabilities that we're bringing to bear. One of the things that I did make available, I did want to talk about this. If you'd like to delve in deeper or have more requests or comments, questions, concerns, and would like a longer session, we do offer a 90-minute session, which goes through all of the topics that you're seeing on the screen. But again, today we're only going to focus on the retention, holds, and preservation. And this is a big topic again and again, preserving content, holding content, query-based hold, leveraging labels to preserve and protect content is very important, and again, will help you with your compliance score. This is just one of the many great feature function capabilities that Office 365 delivers. What I created in this presentation is a link to the old links used to talk about what data loss prevention is, not how to implement it. So I modified these advanced message encryption. Instead of learning more about advanced message encryption, when you click this button, it actually takes you how to deploy advanced message encryption or advanced audit capabilities. And then records management is all here as well. So if I click on this link, it will indeed take me to the learn more about records management and Office 365. So again, super great topic and wonderful content that we have there. And I know this is a little bit of a bug. Again, not to continue to bring up the same subject matter, but again, holding, retaining content can help you, and the way that you retain content can help you be more compliant. So with that, what I'd like to do is just jump ahead here. There's some important things here, and if you look at this from a historical term, or historical standpoint, in the old days, and I'm just looking at email here, but this could be SharePoint, it could be OneDrive, it could be, file shares, it could be anything. But in the old days, what people used to do is they used these systems to tier their storage, first of all, to get their content from a highly performant system like Exchange. They were moving the junk off of their very expensive SAN fiber channel RAID 10 and moving that to like a nearline storage area network that might have been significantly less expensive, SATA RAID 5. So we'd have A, more capacity, B, lower performance, C, significantly lower cost, or we could just move this offline to just a bunch of disks. And Exchange started supporting JBOD, just a bunch of disks, back in like 2010 as performance storage. And of course, in Microsoft, our Office 365 services, we've moved from 7,500 RPM fiber channel RAID 10 storage in our data centers to 10K or 15K RPM disks to now solid state disks. So your content in Office 365A is on the most performant storage. B, we utilize something called in-place records. So you don't have to move this content around. You don't have to think about lower cost storage. Again, we're giving every user a 100 gig mailbox and an unlimited archive. We give every user a unlimited OneDrive account. And we give you a lot of SharePoint storage. I think that just recently had a 40% increase not too long ago. The disadvantages with these old solutions was you had multiple stores, you had to manage those stores, you had to manage storage, you had to manage controllers, you had all of this management stuff that you had to do. There was no real single source of truth because content was replicated all over the place. While people called this data progression. Data really didn't progress automatically. It didn't keep hot data or live data on the fastest storage, and it didn't put the inaccessed or the cold data on the cheapest storage. So there was no true progression there. There was a lot of management, again, as I mentioned, and then people bolted on these e-discovery compliance solutions that weren't really that great. And yes, you had a copy of content, but where that was and how easy it was to find was a lot of problems. Now, in the cloud, we're going to manage your Exchange. And today, Exchange 2019, I just keep trying to use these slides to see how many years I can get out of these slides. I think I built these about a decade ago. But your Exchange 2013 running in the cloud, your storage is in the cloud, and you don't really have to worry about this. Again, we give you oodles, and that's a technical term, oodles of storage in the cloud. We give you lots of space. You can put content on hold. You can hold it forever. And again, as I mentioned, as we've moved up the performance scale from 7,500 RPM to 10K to 15K to solid state to high performance solid state disk, customers didn't have to do anything. So it's a huge, huge benefit that you don't have to worry about this storage and gosh, will I be able to read this medium in the future? I was working with a fairly large city in the Western United States, and they were telling me that after people left these positions with their city government, that they had to retain their mailboxes for 100 years. And I asked them, 100 years, what 20 years ago, what did you put this content on that you still have to hold it for 80 years and make it accessible? They took me down to their basement and they showed me all these storage bankers boxes. Some had just come in from a third party who stored them in some salt mine or something, I guess. But they brought in, they used to print people's entire mailboxes out, put them in these bankers boxes, and then ship them off. Well, I've got a 56 gig mailbox, so I probably would have filled 5 or 6 storage boxes myself. Anyway, then they showed me the more modern, and I'm using the rabbit ear air quotes here, their more modern approach was they kept all this information on these huge, my daughter would call them huge CDs, but they were laser discs. And about 90% of the laser discs had laser rot. They were no longer good. And I don't even think there's a laser disc reader anymore. So the nice thing about in-place records is, as we've moved from 7,500 to 10K to 15K to solid state disk, down the road when we move to dilithium crystal storage, way off in the future, just know that you'll still be able to access, retrieve, search for, and produce that content. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about e-discovery, but all of these things are intertwined and there aren't any disadvantages. There's really nothing for you to manage. The vendor, us, Microsoft, we manage all this. We manage all the storage, etc. You don't have multiple sources of truth. When you do purge something, that is purged and is gone forever. So that's the really cool thing. And again, these old systems, I grew up in Minnesota where fishing and hunting is a right. Jesse Ventura, when he was governor, he made that a right of every Minnesotan to be able to fish and to hunt. And I look at in the olden days, it would be a little bit like going out and scooping up this lake and then dumping it in a swimming pool and then sending a diver down for these records that you'd need to hold. Where today we can use a query, we can find the content that we need to hold. We can have a label applied to content if it has this content. If it is of this context, it's a grant application. So again, we can fingerprint a document and make a permitting application, a grant application, federal funds request application, any of these things, just based upon what the form or file looks like, we can assign a label and then determine that that has to be retained for X amount of period of time. So that's pretty cool. So again, we're being smart about this. We're leaving all the data out in the data lake. We're only retaining or creating a record for that which has bit our hook or our bait, our query or our label has shown us that this has these words or was created by this user or it's in this place. in the cloud, so we're going to retain that for a little longer period of time. So again, a very much easier, a quicker, better thing than these old systems of the past that, vaulted off stuff and then you had to go search and review these items, et cetera. And we'll talk more about that during the e-discovery session. But again, know that all of these things are really intertwined. And this really comes up when we look at query-based records or query-based holds, when I'm doing search and discovery and then saying, aha, I found this stuff, now I want to put it on hold, or I've held these things, now I need to search it and then present it and deliver it, produce it to a court of law. So I've built out this analogy because there are a number of ways that we can create policies and assign labels or policy or rules to content to hold them. And I've made this little graphic here, and I'm using the height of the bar to show the number of users that are impacted, and the width of the bar, the amount of content that is going to be impacted by this retention or hold policy. I wish I had a third dimension here, and this will become clear in a second, because I'd also like to say, hey, is this an implicit policy or is this a very explicit policy? So the more explicit the policy is, the greater the preservation or the purge of that content. So again, we can have a very implicit policy or a very explicit policy. A good example of this from an information management perspective, retention wise, we might want to say, hey, we are going to hold everybody's OneDrive content for 1 year. Then we might come back and say, hey, well, the Department of Transportation, we actually are going to create a more explicit policy, and maybe we do this via a file plan. In our file plan, we designate things as health and benefits or health and safety or medical records or some other type of record, or maybe it's just a departmental group like Department of Transportation. We're going to get more explicit and say, hey, Department of Transportation, we're going to delete their content every 90 days. So in that case, this would be a very narrow width-wise layer of my wedding cake here, and it wouldn't be that high because it would only impact the DOT users and the DOT data. So it could be just a little teeny slice of this layer of my wedding cake here. And then again, we could have something, again, like I mentioned, permitting application or a request for federal funds. That content could be run through the fingerprinting engine. And again, we could say, hey, this is this type of file, it belongs in this place, and we're going to retain it for X amount of period of time. And then with Teams becoming so popular, chat messages, files shared within Teams, we do also have these modern group locations, team or modern group member. We have people who are in a Office 365 modern group, and we're going to either preserve or purge their content set to a different time frame. And then we have our query-based, which again, through e-discovery, I might be discovering content, and I can say, hey, based upon this search result, I want to put this content on hold. And again, we'll cover that in great detail across the core e-discovery and advanced e-discovery sessions coming up over the next 2 weeks. But we'll look at this today from a very light. And then we have our inactive users, again, people who've retired or left the organization. We can put a very specific hold, a very explicit hold on that content. The important thing here is that if we did have a query-based hold, for example, and it's some matter or some case that we're looking at, and we're saying, oh, okay, I'm going to place this content on hold. And then maybe down the road, I have another hold placed on my mailbox or some items in my mailbox. We are not going to purge that content until all of these holds are released. So when the case is resolved, the holds are released. Maybe I'm no longer a custodian or a person of interest in this case or matter. I'm removed from that case or matter. The hold is released. Then when all my holds are released, purge policies will come back up onto my content. Now, there are some principles that need to be observed here. And these most basic principles are that retention wins over deletion, that the longest retention period will win, the shortest deletion period will win. And again, explicit inclusion will always win over implicit inclusion. So again, I'm going to preserve all my OneDrive content for a year. Aha, but just this team, I'm going to only preserve their content for 90 days. Or I'm going to purge after 90 days, because again, if I say I'm going to retain this agency's content for 90 days and I'm saying I'm going to hold everybody else's for a year, the longest retention period will win. So again, if I come out here and say, hey, I've got a 1-year hold, but now I've got an explicit deletion policy, that explicit inclusion in a purge policy will win over an implicit inclusion policy, even though it's got a longer retention period. It's a lot to wrap your head around. And again, I've got some reference materials here, which I'll point to in just a second. But again, and I already clicked out and linked to them, but it's super great content. And again, this information management and preservation of content does apply to the e-discovery reference model, or EDRM, which is a standards-based model for how we do e-discovery. But again, just know that, you know, a lot of e-discovery is have I managed my information? Have I governed my information properly? And these 3 layers of the wedding cake apply here. And then have I preserved content that is maybe involved in a matter? The other thing I want to point out is that the advanced compliance SKU, or purchasing data governance a la carte, or leveraging the E5 capabilities, the file plan and retention are really components of those higher level SKUs out there. So with that, let's take a look and see what we can do with this. So I'm just going to leave my tenancy here as me, and now become Megan Bowen, and jump into a new tenant here. Now, I will point out, and I should point out, that we're straddling versions. So today, if you're not familiar with compliance.microsoft.com and you are in the GCC, the Government Community Cloud, don't worry about that. You're probably still using the Security and Compliance Center today, and that's just fine. And the thing I love about the Security and Compliance Center is that does follow my wedding cake metaphor here. So I'm seeing at the bottom layer of my cake, I've got information governance and a retention policy. And then above that, I had a file plan, and here's file plan. And the beautiful thing about these file plans, if you already have a record plan, and as a component of that, your file plan, you can import your file plan. So know that you do have the ability to import your labels. And this is nothing more than, you will see that there's a blank template here. So you can export your file plan and then import their file plan using this template that we give you here. So that's a beautiful thing. And then we can say, hey, we're going to create these events. Like I was working again with a county, and in the county, they would retain emails and files associated with a project until that project was for X number of years after the project was complete. So they could have a project complete event. Or I was working with a Department of Human Services, and that Department of Human Services said, well, we have different contracts for different things. They were actually a division called Aging and Adult Services, something that I will soon be using those services for, hopefully. And yeah, in Aging and Adult Services, they said, well, for example, we've got different modes of transportation. Like we've got these vans that will take people to a mall to get their steps in and walk around the mall. Well, that's a non-medical transportation. We only need to retain those contracts 3 years after they expire. But we also have ambulances that come and pick people up and maybe give or provide care en route to an emergency room or a hospital. And in that case, we need to keep that contract for 7 years. So dependent upon where that contract was kept, what type of contract it was, what the event was. And in both cases, the event is the same. It's a contract expiration, but it's different types of contracts. So how long we retain a content and when it comes up for disposition, and you will have disposition reviews in here, and you can say, okay, this content now is good for disposition, but this is all part of our records management capabilities. And then in information governance, again, we've got retention policies here. Now, I'm showing you this in the current version, and this is in your government community cloud today. But know that you'll be moving to, and I can show you this really quickly by bouncing into a government community cloud tenant here. If I look at this government community cloud tenant, and I'm now looking at the compliance center, here's the compliance manager, and I'm looking at my, sorry about that. I am looking at my compliance center. I've got my information governance and my records management. So again, these are a little bit flip-flopped compared to my wedding cake where information governance was at the bottom and records management was above that. And then labels were yet another thing above that. So again, in your tenant today, you might see these items. If you don't see them, you might want to make sure that you go to custom navigation here and either select all or make sure that you've got information governance and records manager chosen here. And from here again, now we've consolidated the retention policies and our individual labels. So my metaphor really holds true in the current state with our records management and information governance and classification of labels. And I loved that we used to be able to go this way and say, hey, I'm going to create a retention policy. I'm going to import my file plan. I'm going to work with my labels. And I do want to show you this. I don't have really any labels in here, so I might bounce back into my commercial tenant, but just know that you have the same feature function capabilities in the GCC and the government cloud. And this yellow banner, you'll see a number of yellow banners if you're in protection.office.com today. But again, these features are rolling out tenant by tenant, so you might not see these inside of your Office 365 by going to compliance.microsoft.com today. But rest assured, they will be there in the not too distant future. If they aren't there, you can go back to your standard security and compliance center, which is protection.office.com, and still create these policies. These policies will move forward. So if I created one here, and let's just do this, we'll create, I've been talking about a OneDrive 1 year policy. I can describe that if I want to further, and know that in the old days, all we had was a purge policy. We didn't really say, yes, we're going to retain this for 1 year. But what we did do is say, hey, delete this content when it hits day 366. And then we got a little bit more flexible here. We added the above and beyond from when it was just created or when it was last modified. Because again, you might want to retain hot data and keep hot data hot and retain it from when it was last modified, not when it was last created. You can do this, hey, 1 year, like our policy and procedure manual at Microsoft has a 1 year retention policy, and we get rid of it after a year and our links no longer work, etc. Because there's a new employee policy and procedural manual comes out every January, middle of January, like the 20th or whatever that third Monday is. So again, delete the old one. Make sure that people are all using the current one. And that's all this really was a purge policy, and that's all you really had access to. Now we do actually have a preservation policy where I can say, hey, I want to keep this content forever, or I want to, keep it for 90 days. And it's really kind of funny that I've got two cities that I work with and they border each other and they're in the same state, obviously in the same country, the United States. One of them, they delete everything every 90 days. And I should have pointed out that you can do days, months, or years here. So if you have a thing for days, instead of 3 years, you could put 1,095 days in there if you so desire. 36 months or 3 years. But I digress here. The one city says, hey, we're just going to delete everything that's older than 90 days from when it was created. So it doesn't matter if it's hot data and lots of people are modifying it, new versions, etc. We're just going to get rid of it. They'd get rid of everything every 90 days, your email, your OneDrive, your SharePoint site content. They literally throw everything away every 91 days. I just couldn't fathom that. Now, the city to the north actually keeps everything forever. They keep everything forever. And I think these are at the opposite ends of the two worst records retention, data governance strategies on the whole planet. But know that you can say, hey, we wanted to keep this OneDrive content for 1 year, and maybe we do want to keep it from when it was last modified. So stale or static junk we'll get rid of, but the hot content that's changing a lot we'll keep around. And then if you do want to delete it, yes. Now, when I go into an actual label and implying a label, and I'll show you that in a second, you'll see that I have the ability in my file plan or in my label to create a disposition review. So I have that. And then there are advanced retention settings here that I can say detect that has these specific words, or I can tie the preservation capability because our labels do one of two things. They either preserve content or they protect content with encryption. So I can say, hey, I want to find content that has these specific words, or I want to find PII, personally identifiable information, or HIPAA, or FTI, or something with a sensitive nature. So again, know that I can leverage these advanced capabilities here as well. So I can say, hey, I'm going to retain the OneDrive content for 1 year, or OneDrive content that, and you'll see where we get to the OneDrive content in just a second, or OneDrive content that matches these words, or again, words or phrases, or has a label attached to it. So that's how we can automate some of that retention of content. So I've got my policy. We're going to keep it for a year from when it was last modified, and then we're just going to delete it after that. Again, I could apply this policy to just email. I could choose specifically where I want to apply this. And again, know that you might have to create multiple records here, because if, again, I wanted to retain Teams chat instead of OneDrive, you'll see that all my other buttons go off. So I might have to create a 1-year Teams chat, but then I can exclude users or groups or team sites as well. But again, we said we were going to apply this to OneDrive. So I'm going to say OneDrive accounts, and no, again, I can exclude, be explicit to say I'm going to keep all of these OneDrive accounts, but exclude these. Or I can say, hey, I only want this policy to apply to these accounts. And that's getting better all the time, how we pick those SharePoint sites and OneDrive accounts, which is a good thing. So then after that, I've said, hey, I've got my policy. I've chosen my location. Again, that bottom layer of the wedding cake, this is a retention policy, information governance. It's going to apply to the vast amount, the largest amount of content in our corpus and the most users. So I can go ahead and create that policy or save it for later. And bazinga, there's my policy created on November 16th. And again, when I go into my information governance over here, I will see that policy get updated and be available inside of my tenant. So when I click on retention, there's my OneDrive 1 year. Now, I mentioned that you can get a little bit more granular with labels, and I'll just show you that. Again, I can come in and just call this, a new SLG demo. And I can, again, describe this. The beautiful thing is, hey, why, Mr. Ms. end user, why should you apply this label? So this is helpful information to the end user, why this retention label is here. And then this could be the SB, the law, the legislation for why our archive plan, our record plan. So this is the description for admins. Why did we create this? You know, it's important with like GDPR. The day before GDPR was enforced, we didn't have any labels or any reason for these labels. The day after GDPR was enforced, we had reasons for that. So you could put, you know, GDPR compliance, blah, 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 again, tying back to compliance. Description for end users, why use this label? Why did we implement this label? And now you can see I've got my additional settings here. Like I'm going to retain this content in this demo for a contract and now I've got some additional things beyond created, modified, when they were labeled. So, hey, yesterday we didn't have GDPR, today we do. When this gets a GDPR label, I'm going to keep it for 1 year and then get rid of it. Or an event, employee activity, or an expiration or termination of a contract or a product lifetime. And again, you can have these built out and be very specific around the types of retention periods and how the retention period or what this is based upon. So I'm going to just stick with, you know, when it was created. And then again, if I have to create a new event type, it's very easy to create that event type that I can add to this drop down list here. So I did want to point that out. And again, I am in a GCC government community cloud tenant. So you should see this in your tenant. If you're not, just know it will roll out very soon. Today, I can say, hey, I'm going to trigger a disposition review, and then I can actually choose the reviewers, and you'll see that in the next step. We've added now a multi-state review process as well. Or if I just wanted to keep this content around, I can do nothing. So I can delete the content automatically. I can trigger disposition review or do nothing. And I'm really interested to see if this is new capability is shipped in here, and that will actually pop up in a second here. I do have a retain items forever, only delete items when they reach a certain age, or don't retain or delete items. So again, I've got a wide variety as I move up with more explicit labels. I also have more control. I hope that's what you're seeing here. And then for my disposition review, again, today I can say, hey, I want to notify, shoot, Megan is not in this tenant. I want to notify the mod administrator, and then let's just say that this is in our legal team, or oh, I just saw a list pop up there. I don't have a good number of recall of the different groups that I have in this tenant, but I do know that you can add a group. So I can say, hey, if the people in this group are notified, then I can notify that group. So I'm going to put in the emergency response team as a bad example here, but again, I told you I didn't know the groups in this tenant, so I apologize for that. But here comes the emergency response team. Again, normally I'd have my records manager, my compliance officer. If I were in my real demo tenant instead of this GCC demo tenant, I'd have my compliance officer, my records officer, and then my legal team or HR team if this were an HR record, etc. So just that easy for me to create a label that now end users can see and apply to their content, or we can automatically apply to content if we so desire. So let's take a look at that right now. So I'm going to switch back while this is being created here. I'm going to pull a Julia Childs, and now we'll take the cake out of the oven. So again, over here I can see and look at my different records and different records management capabilities. So I've got my file plan, I've got my label policies, from a records management, and I've got my events and disposition. So a little bit different view than what you have, but it's the exact same tools. And again, I'll see my same policies like the DOT 90-day here. And then from an information governance, we were just creating a retention policy, and then I created a label. And then to automatically have that label, I can publish a label, and then I do have this automatically apply a label to content. So again, these should look, act, work exactly the same as what you're seeing today from a records management or information governance. I create my label, I publish that label, and then I can auto apply that label. I can import my file plan, I can create retention policies, and then again, I can archive mailboxes off and then either make them available to e-discovery or search or not make them available. So wide variety of capabilities and tools that you have to work from a records retention and just being able to retain your content. You will see learn mores here. So at any given time, look for the blue learn more links, and this will talk about archive mailboxes and how you enable archive mailboxes. If you're confused about auto applying a policy, most of the time, and I probably shouldn't have done that, but most of the time there will be things to learn more about label policies. So these learn more links are fantastic. And then a little tip from your Uncle Tom. If you scroll down here to the bottom, you can download this as a PDF and then print this out or keep it handy. And then what I like is, I hate killing trees or wasting paper, so please do use recycled paper. But if you print on one side on the back, you can make your notes or reduce the margin and print two-sided to save that paper, for crying out loud. But then, mark up your notes on why we created this retention policy. What part of our file plan is this a part of? Where in our records plan does this particular information governance records plan item reside? So beautiful thing that you pull down or create this PDF, take it offline, reduce the margin. You can use that beautiful feature, Word PDF reflow, open this back up into Word, type your notes in the margin if you so desire. But again, I've got a nice PDF here, and hey, I can get right to, a topic very quickly and easily, something you don't have in the paper world. You'd have to page through this. I didn't realize I was creating a 3,025 page file here. So that's why it took so long, and I had to stall with all my verbose explanation. But the cool thing is that the entire compliance section is here, and it does have all of the information for everything in the compliance section. I just did a show all resources, so everything under compliance.microsoft.com from our compliance manager score, which again, you'll be seeing this very soon in the government community cloud. We're seeing it now in this tenant. Woohoo! Beautiful thing. So this might be rolling out. I can tell you that yesterday this wasn't, or not yesterday, but last Thursday this wasn't here for me to demo, and today it rolled to this tenant over the weekend, so it is here, where again I can see my compliance manager, my improvement actions, the solutions, and it is pretty funny that while I was preparing this content today, last week we didn't have, and I'm glad I didn't record this last week, because we didn't have records management or information governance in the GCC, and today those features are here. Again, you can for sure continue to use them in the Security and Compliance Center. I think you're just going to have a much better experience. It's significantly more performant and better grouping of the content here, although in my graphic, these two are a little bit out of whack. But the good thing is that it's all integrated in and works wonderfully together. So with that, and I went to information protection here instead of information governance. I apologize for my misclicks today, but it is kind of late on a Friday. It's been late on a Monday, long day. But do know that all of these items will be lighting up in the government community cloud. A lot of new feature function capabilities coming this quarter. And I hope that this tour of retention and records management has been helpful for you. And again, you will find most of the feature function capability inside of your information governance and records management. If you are a records manager and these are really the only things that you're concerned about, do set your navigation. You can set that navigation so that when you log into compliance.microsoft.com, it will show you and get you quickly to the items that you want to have effect on. So the other thing that you could do is bookmark this, and it would take you right to compliance.microsoft.com records management. But again, this is where you'll find your file plan, your label policies that are generated as a part of your file plan, your events, and again, you can create an event here, or again, when we're in information governance and creating a label or that label policy, we can create that event at that point in time, and then our retention policies are right here. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. I do have, again, these resources are out in that PowerPoint presentation that I had. A lot of great new feature function capabilities, and just remember that there are a number of ways for you to create a number of policies to retain content, whether it's in a information management retention policy, records management file plan, in the advanced SKUs or E5, or through classification labels, group labels, query-based or inactive labels. And do remember these retention policies, principles of retention. Retention will always win over deletion. Longest retention period will win. Explicit inclusion wins over implicit, and the shortest deletion period will win. Again, I want to thank you very much for your time and attention today, and do consider to come in next week when, again, our topic will be, of course, focused on our content search e-discovery, and we will touch on our compliance boundaries for e-discovery and information barriers, keeping information safe and secure from others. And then our final week will be in advanced e-discovery. Once again, thank you very much for your time and attention today, and happy records creating. Bye for now.